What's up, guys? I'm your host, Brandon J. Welcome to the Brandon J. Show. I'm joined by a personal friend of mine. We've known each other for over a decade, Mr. Ernie Singleton. Ernie, how are you, man?
I am wonderful, Jason. Jason Derulo was on my mind, and I was just thinking, because you and I were having a TikTok conversation, but we'll come back to that. DJ, I'm fabulous, man. I'm excited to be on the Brandon J. Show.
Man, I'm excited to have you. I met you in Los Angeles, California, and you were judging a talent competition. And I remember, I think you were with your VP of A&R at the time too, Touhey, and it was just awesome. We connected right away. I could tell you knew the business inside and out, and I had to get to know you more. And you were very gracious in giving me an opportunity to work with you. So I have to say thank you. And Ernie, you're just an awesome person, and I'm really grateful for this interview.
You're welcome. That's funny. I almost forgot about that talent competition that I was judging, but you're absolutely right. You have an excellent memory.
Yes, sir. And for those that have not seen what you've accomplished, I'm just going to name just a few of the artists that you've worked with over the years. Bone Thugs and Harmony, Gladys Knight, my goodness, Prince. And, Prince, in my opinion, Ernie, is still one of the best artists that has ever graced the stage. His music is just incredible. And I did an interview the other evening with Jaslyn Soul, one of the last actresses to work with, Tiny Lister, a dear friend of yours as well.
Tiny, yeah.
And basically, Jaslyn was sharing that she's working on the Minnesota Sounds, dedication to Prince. And when I thought about Prince, I thought about Ernie. I thought about all these people that have worked with these greats. And it's just incredible to have you, man. And, collectively, and correct me if I'm wrong here, you have garnered over 150 albums and a mixture of platinum and gold with being at MCA, Warner Brothers, and all the projects you oversaw.
No, you're right. Do a slight correction though. It's a combination of albums, hit singles, the combined bodies of work, more than 150. And I've been fortunate, man. I've been blessed to work with some amazing talent, BJ. You mentioned Prince. We did an album with Prince called Love Sexy. I don't know how many people remember that album, but it's where Prince was naked on the cover.
Oh my goodness.
And it was a very controversial project in-house at Warner Brothers because Warner's is a very artist, and I think it still is, a very artist-oriented company where the artist's rights and decision to do what they feel as an artist, the label goes out of its way to be hands-off and allow the artist to be the artist and not dictate to them. Well, that particular album Prince did, and Prince didn't want anybody to see the artwork. That's rare in a record company. You get to see the artwork, you see it as it evolves and as it develops. At Warner Brothers, only our art department could see that artwork for the album Love Sexy. And, nobody thought of anything. We had no idea that it was going to evolve into an album. I wish I had the album here to show it to you, but people can Google it. But it was Prince on the cover, nude with a leaf covering his private parts.
Oh my goodness.
And but full body throttle, no clothes on, and of course everybody's mouth dropped, right?
You talk about controversial. That's as controversial as it gets, Ernie.
But the album was allowed to be released, and just interesting. But he was you mentioned him, but Prince falls in a category of creative people that is like he's the top of the pyramid. People like Quincy Jones, Stevie Wonder, these people are top of the pyramid with who they are and what they do.
Yeah,
And I had nothing but love and respect for Prince, man. And to me, though, I call those God shots. Meaning,
that's it, man.
I was blessed to have the privilege of working with people of that caliber. And Prince is one of my favorites, man. Yeah.
That's incredible. And Ernie, let's talk about your beginning, right? We know that you've done all of this amazing work with the labels and all of these great artists, but you started in radio.
Yeah.
Tell us about that, about how it was, the transition, I should say, between programming and being an on-air jock and going to work for the machines, the labels, the majors.
Wow.
A lot of those don't know that you started originally in radio. What was the most difficult part of the transition from working at terrestrial radio, an FM radio station, and I believe it was Louisiana, going to work for the major labels?
Well, that wasn't a difficult part. I actually was, I worked radio successfully. I was general market #1 in ratings, which means I wasn't #1 just in the Black audience. I was #1 in the entire city. I was a radio jockey in New Orleans before hip hop.
Wow.
I say that because in my era, jocks, we talked a lot of trash, and it was fun. Well, so radio to me was theater of the mind, because
Right.
I knew I'm sitting in this control room and I have an audience, but I don't know where they are, what they're dealing with, good, bad, indifferent, So, you have to entertain people and grasp their attention. I called it command the suspension of their attention. But we were jocks in that era where we talked a lot of trash, and sometimes it wasn't just trash, sometimes it was just fact. But to answer your question, I left radio after I graduated college. My radio job was in New Orleans. When I graduated college, I had a degree in accounting. So I was going for accounting jobs, interviews, right? I'd go to interviews for companies, major accounting companies, and the interviewers all were in New Orleans. And when I do the interviews, the interviewer would ask me what I was doing, my current job. And when I told them, they knew me. They were meeting me for the first time, but they knew me as a radio jock. So they wanted to know that I know Aretha Franklin. And the answer was yes. Did I know Kool and the Gang? And the answer was yes. Did I know James Brown? And the answer was yes. So they felt like, why would you leave that job and come to do this? So I would leave every interview, walk into my car, and thinking that interview didn't go so well.
Right.
Because it went from me getting interviewed to work for that company to them thinking that, how would you leave a job like a radio job where you meet all these celebrities? So I did something foolish. I was 25. I said, I'm going to quit and have a full-time job hunting. I had a wife, kid, bills. Not a good idea.
A lot of stuff, right?
But so I started spinning records as a DJ.
Okay.
And in the process, I also started promoting records. As time went on, I created such an amazing furor of activity. I promoted Quincy Jones, had an album called Stuff Like That. I promoted a group called the Brothers Johnson, Strawberry Letter, Get the Funk Out My Face. That was my project. I promoted Donald Byrd and the Blackbirds.
Man.
Augie Johnson and a group called Cider Effect. All these records that I was promoting would just blow up in New Orleans. So the record companies in LA and Fantasy Records, which is one in Berkeley, California, they were asking, what the heck is going on in New Orleans? Because the sales were so through the roof, right?
Yeah.
Because I was a guy who would promote the radio stations on playing the hit single, But I'm also going to show you, hey man, other than Get the Funk Out My Face, there's a song here called Strawberry Letter. You need to play that. So I was getting other songs played out of all these different artists' albums. And theoretically, the consumer was eating up the music better than it was normally and better than it was in any other city around the country.
That's
so the
incredible.
companies were taking notice. The companies were taking notice. I ended up with that from that job because I quit my radio job. So I'm now going to radio stations promoting jocks. And surprisingly, I was on a 100,000 watt station in New Orleans, right? But when I'd go to Mississippi, or when I'd go to Baton Rouge, or when I'd go to Lake Charles, Louisiana, or wherever, the jocks knew me. They knew me from having heard me on the radio.
Because you were dominating in New Orleans.
And in a very arrogant, confident but cocky way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I would do stuff on the radio like said any other jocks on the air when I was on. They had to send me their rent money in because they had to pay rent for being on the air at the same time that I was on the air. So it was arrogance, right?
Right.
So people knew me because of things we do and say. But the transition was smooth. When I finally ended up working inside record companies, that was like a dream come true for me because now I'm working in major corporations. It would be 4 or 5 years before I was given any autonomy or authority. And that was with a company called Mercury Records. Mm-hmm. We had the Gap Band, Confunction, Barcase, Kool and the Gang, group called Crown Heights Affair, the Fatback Band. We had Millie Jackson. All those were artists that I had the privilege of working with. And,
wow.
And as time went on, I was promoted to eventually, they gave me a position of executive authority. I didn't really have any authority. I just was an executive. I didn't have no authority. but my boss.
You had authority back in radio.
Well, yeah, but in this job I didn't have authority, and right. I started to not really like the way my boss worked because I thought that they were being insensitive to the guys on the streets where right. I was. Right. But I had become an executive, so I'm now taken off the streets and I'm in the executive suite, right? Right. But I'm a junior executive because my boss and another guy and everybody else were like mid-level and senior executives, so I didn't have no real say so. Until the time came where I worked for Casablanca, which was Parliament, Cameo, Donna Summer, Village People, Funky Town, Lips Inc. All those were my records. So now I'm working for a company that operates like everything is a Rolls Royce or a Maybach. Wow. Casablanca was one of the most grand companies of all the record companies. In fact, all the other record companies talked about Casablanca because they thought the company overspent. Casablanca, if you could flash back to the stage show, just the stage show of the Village People, there was the costumes. It was a very expensive presentation. Parliament Funkadelic, same thing, very grand. I mean, there was a spaceship that would, I don't care if it was the Reunion Arena in Dallas came along much later, but it doesn't matter what the arena was, spaceship would land on stage. The outfits again was ridiculous. Kiss, I didn't work Kiss, but remember the makeup and the outfits of Kiss. Yes. Cher, I did work a Cher record. So the point I'm making is Casablanca was a groundbreaking record company for me. And as time went on, I was working at Mercury and I didn't agree with some of the policies. So when I became an executive, I made sure that my staff did not have to fight the executive team. The only fight my staff had to do was the fight that they had to do with people like you, Brandon, to get you to play our records. Or to get retail to stock our music or to carry it. Or to get a club DJ to play the record. That was my staff's biggest job. when they plugged into the home office, it's like a 15 or 16-year-old or 12-year-old coming home. You're in the safe zone.
Man.
So I made sure my staff had the ammunition they need, and had the budget they needed. And if anybody had to be called on the carpet, it would be me.
Yeah.
So I'm the guy inside the record company who would fight the accounting people. I would fight with the marketing department if we needed money for something and they didn't want to spend it. If I had an artist going in to do a show and I want to buy tickets for the radio station and they're going to show me why they can't buy but 20 tickets, but I need 40, I'm going to get the 40 tickets.
Man, but that's what it takes, though. It takes that drive, that attitude. I don't really consider that to be cocky or conceited. I consider that to be confident, because people are trusting that you are going to make the right decisions. That's why they placed you in that position in the first place. And you were definitely the right man for the job. I mean, what you did in radio spoke for itself, and everybody knew that. So it totally makes sense. And I'm not trying to be insensitive to those out there, but this is how you have to be. This is a tough industry. And this leads me to my next question, Mr. Singleton. How have you, I know you've seen music evolve since you started in radio and you started working at the labels, but now it's on a whole nother, it's a whole nother animal. You have so many different social media platforms, like we were talking about TikTok and Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and Snapchat and YouTube. And I think, my personal opinion, I think it's more difficult now to launch as an artist, because you have to have everything across the board. You have to have consistent numbers across the board with all of these platforms. And I want to know your thoughts on that.
Well, I don't think you have to have consistent numbers on all the platforms, but I do think you have to show somewhere where you have strength. Okay. And that you and I were talking about Jason Derulo earlier, and I mentioned him, and I'm not an authority on Jason Derulo or the social media platforms. So let me just say that. But today, if we were 10 years back, maybe it would have been MySpace. I'm speculating, but it would have probably been MySpace 10 years ago. But today, TikTok is definitely a big platform. If you got great numbers on TikTok, and you're of the right age demo, it's going to be a runaway. Now that may, we look at certain artists. I don't know. I look at
DaBaby
like
featuring Roddy Ricch, Rockstar. They did the TikTok challenge, and that record went double platinum as a result of that.
Yeah. Well, I just made a note about Fortnite, because gaming has become a big deal lately. And if artists have music that resonates in that platform, there is very, very interesting things that can be done. But but all the platforms is not for everybody. Right. Okay. We talked Jason Derulo. We talked DaBaby. It could be TikTok. But most hip hoppers are not big on flaunting any kind of dance. They weren't in the 90s, and they're really not in the 2020. So you've got to have some other things that defines where your platform is. Last night I saw going back, right, E40 and Too Short on Versus.
Right. You sent me the video.
Well, I wanted you to, I thought you were tuned in. Yeah. And if you weren't, I knew that you needed to be. So I sent you a message.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I sent you a message. But to answer your question, the transitions, we all in life have to make transitions. Yes. Transitions, guys, are about, in radio, we call them segues. How do you go from the WAP song into the new Justin Bieber song or Ed Sheeran song? Transitions. How do you do that? Now, part of it is what you do as the announcer. Maybe I'll say something because I'm going to make it mentally easy for you to transcend and stay with me. Because my job is to increase my listenership, not to jolt your brain and make you go away.
Absolutely.
So if I know I'm going to go from Jason Derulo to WAP, from WAP to a Justin Bieber song, and maybe I'm going to go from the Justin Bieber song just for, I don't do this too often, I'm going to say it, but just for shits and giggles, I'm going to go to Herbie Hancock's Mr.
Right.
Magic and
Right.
just give you something totally different.
Right.
Before I come out of that Herbie Hancock with a Tupac song, before I put you back into today. I'm going to transcend all of those pieces so that you as a listener feels enlightened, enriched, and embellished, and compelled to listen to see what am I going to do next.
Ernie, I got a project for you coming up with radio, and it's not about getting an artist played on radio. It's about a new innovative scenario. So we'll talk about that off camera, but I want to talk about something very interesting. And we've seen it with, Joe Rogan and so many others. And I'm talking about the world of podcasts, right? And I'm even going to morph into, as you say, transition into the podcasting arena in 2021 with more of an audio presence. But I know that you, sir, are launching a podcast, and I know you can't give us all the details, but I want to know some of the, what can you share with us about your podcast coming up?
Well, having worked in the music industry, I always tell people I enjoyed my work because my business was pleasure.
Absolutely.
Even in radio, it was pleasure. It was playing music and communicating to an audience, and getting them to listen, and enlightening them and brightening their day from an audio perspective and from a good vibration perspective.
Such a great feeling.
Yeah. But it's work. But it's amazing when you start to see that you have reached. You've reached Bebe's kids, and you've also reached your elite educators. You've reached people. The Black community is there, and white people are tuned in as well and enjoying you. Then you're communicating. So
a collaborative effort, absolutely.
But for me, it was always giving people what they want. Mm-hmm. And more importantly, I would always ask myself, what can you do to keep somebody like you tuned in? So that was a big deal for me.
Yes.
And in the music business, it was no different. You learn to give artists their space to be creative, but you also have to
navigate them through the tunnel.
Well, sometimes you have to shut up and see where they're going, because I've experienced transitions in music. Today, you talk about the social media platform, it's very, very necessary. You're right, it is more complex than before. Unfortunate as well for the creatives. What happened when I ran MCA or worked at Casablanca or Mercury Records, Warner Brothers, we financed everything. We wrote the checks. So if Prince made an album and did artwork, didn't matter what we thought about the artwork, we paid for that.
Right.
But you said something off the call to me about the brand. The brand of the company was to give the artist creative freedom. Even when you don't like it, you have to back up. Madonna, Like a Prayer, the crucifixion and all that stuff was in the video. We have to not assert our thoughts and philosophies on creative people. You got to allow creative people to be creative and recognize that it's art. Even though it might be commercial, we're trying to make money, it's art. Sometimes we
Is
score
hard.
big, and sometimes we don't score so big.
Yeah.
The platform today, a lot of people complain and say, "Oh man, social media, I don't want to deal with that." Well, I relate to that. You know, you're talking to the guy who didn't want to see the vinyl go away. Okay, that was me complaining.
And vinyl's coming back though, isn't it?
It's not going to come back like it was because we don't have the facilities to. For vinyl, you have
Right.
to have turntables and all the apparatus that goes with it. Those things won't come fully back because technology has taken us to another dimension.
It has.
Okay, I can MP3 you or Dropbox you a song today from Las Vegas to, let's say you were in Paris or Istanbul, and you got it immediately. So it's a different world we're living in. That's technology. That's the same thing that I think applies when we look at where social media is.
Yes.
You know, kids don't want to be where their parents are.
Right.
When I say kids, I'm talking the generation specifically between the age of 12 and 20. They're not trying to be on Facebook because their mom and daddy there. I'm following you. Like, no, that's what I'm trying to get away from.
No, I want to talk on Snapchat and I want to talk on TikTok.
Snapchat, TikTok, Twitch. They're going different places. And that's going to always be the case.
Have a wealth of knowledge and wisdom, and a lot of executives that were in positions such as yourself of power, they aren't really sharing this wealth of knowledge with people. So I'm grateful to share it with the audience because, you know, a lot of independent artists reach out to me on a regular, yo, man, I need help with this, whether it's blog, whether it's radio, whether it's streams. And I want people to go back and reflect upon this interview to see someone that was in the position that worked with all these people that inspired these specific individuals, right? And see how things have transitioned. But what's important today is knowing your audience. It's always been important. And the researching and the reporting. And I think these are the things that will create an adjustment, a transition for the artist to get to that next step in their career, that next phase.
Well, you know, you are 200% correct. But it's sharing. The only way we really keep what we got is by giving it away. And that's a big part of what I want to do on the podcast. I want, you know, I'm going to talk a lot about music, but I want to talk more than just about music. I told you that, you know, I used to say my business is pleasure. We did was pleasure. Was it pleasure in radio? Pleasure when I worked on the record side. I consult a lot of talent and creative people today. I enjoy it. I understand it. And it's like teaching a baby how to walk. It requires a little bit of patience. And they don't all start walking and running at the same identical time. But within a certain number of months or a year or so, you expect them to be able to do all of that. Crawl, walk, run, okay? Because it's a natural process.
Absolutely.
What I can tell you about my podcast to answer that is my goal is to share information, but it's also to kind of shine a light on the amazing, brilliant genius of people. I've been privileged to be in the presence of people like Prince and Quincy. I got to say the same thing for my guys in New Edition. Though there were 5 guys, it became 6, but 5 guys who came from the projects of Boston, their passion and desire is what we poured into at MCA. And they evolved, okay? Of all, you know, and those are kind of things that I want to talk about.
Mr. Telephone Man, I love that record.
Yeah. It was an interesting record. A short version of a much more longer conversation. That song is what triggered a tremendous amount of opportunity into Bobby Brown that also fueled his young arrogance that made him
Right.
want to do the lead more, and he was qualified, but but the machine of us at MCA and the body of guys in New Edition was not ready to make it happen in 2 or 3 months. They might have made it happen in 2 or 3 years. Bobby was impatient, not unusual. Clashed on a show in San Francisco, in Oakland, the Circle. I think it's called the Theater in the Round or something. There's a Round Theater in the Bay Area.
Yeah, in Oakland, California. Yeah, I believe
the concert.
Yeah.
And Bobby wanted to sing Mr. Telephone Man longer than his segment was on that song. And the band and the group was prepared to sing the song the way it was recorded.
Wow.
That was the incident that triggered Bobby Brown leaving New Edition.
Hey, when he came out with a song, I still remember the single, and I was quite young when the single came out, but my prerogative, as he said, it's his prerogative, right?
Yeah, but now you've got Bobby Brown after that incident that I just mentioned in the Bay Area, solo artist,
right?
King of Stage, his first album, sold 300,000 units. Not bad, wasn't a big record breaker, but as a record company, we did not lose money.
Right.
The next album, 10 million units. That's my prerogative. That's
incredible.
Tenderoni. That was the big Bobby Brown record. Bobby Brown as an artist sold more records than either one of the other groups, in BBD, New Edition, or even Johnny Gill at the time. Now the numbers may be different today, but Bobby's album with My Prerogative and all of that, it ended up being a 10 million unit album.
But what's amazing, Ernie, is when you can still go into a club this very day in 2020 and you can hear Poison and you can hear My Prerogative and people still love these songs as if they're brand new. That's how you know these artists really have something special.
Yeah, but that's kind of what I was saying earlier about the podcast, spotlighting great talent.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. There's a part of our Constitution that says all men are created equal. That's true, but we're not all equal. The magnitude of talent is different.
Right.
And how we handle, I'm gonna say conflict. How we handle conflict,
man,
is a
preaching
challenge.
to the choir. Preach on, brother.
and how we handle our creativity is different.
Yeah.
So there's a lot, but my podcast is going to be just about pleasurable things. It won't be just music, but more to come on that.
Ernie, thank you so much for this interview, man. I didn't want to give away and spill the beans because I know this podcast is something very dear to you, but I wanted to plant the seed per se to the audience to let them know that you yourself, sir, are coming out with your own podcast in 2021, and I'm excited for you. Like I said, we've known each other. We go back. I'm excited to reconnect, to see what we can do to align ourselves for that next phase, in that next transition per se, in this crazy, ever so changing industry. And I'm not just talking about the music and entertainment. I'm talking about technology as a whole. So Ernie, man, proud of you. Keep it up. Happy holidays, and I'll see you very soon, sir.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the opportunity, and I'm looking forward to doing this again with you, BJ.
I got one last question for you, Ernie. Where can people go to follow you at home?
Wow. Well, I have 5 Facebook accounts. My primary one would be Ernie, E-R-N-I-E, Ernie Singleton. And there's also an Ernies Singleton, but those are my 2 primaries. Ernie Singleton is the one I do the most. My Instagram is also Ernie Singleton, and you'll find me suited and booted on one. And I have an E Singleton 101 Instagram account.
I will tag you in the lower third so they will know which Instagram to follow. And Ernie, as always, man, it's awesome talking to you. Thanks so much, and I'll see you very soon.
My last one, if anybody want to email me, it's Ernie, I'm sorry, it's SEC Ernie at yahoo.com.
You've had that email address for over a decade, Ernie.
Well, I've had Gmails and AOL.
Yeah.
Thank you
Ernie
so much.
Singleton right here on the Brandon J Show. I'm Brandon J. We'll see you next time. Goodbye for now.
Thank you, Brandon.